It's the Sick Show. It's the Sick Show. It's the Sick Show.
Yeah, okay.
I'm excited. I'm super excited for this. Number one, I've been on break for quite a while because of work, and two, we talked about this when you first came in. We talked about this case, and it made me start thinking about murders in Blackford County. And my wife and I, Jennifer and I, were having lunch today talking about how many murders have been in Blackford County, in its existence. And I real quickly jumped online and I found the Kraus murder. Are you familiar with this one?
You talk about Todd George?
No. This is 1904,
Oh,
where a woman poisoned her stepdaughter.
yes, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, leave him be. Just so everybody knows, we have a new co-host. His name's Frankie. Everybody, welcome Frankie.
Hello, Frankie.
He is a Aussie doodle that's currently eating Mr. Beckley's hat. Frankie.
So there's an interesting book, Grave Matters, through the Historical Society.
100%. Totally was going to go uptown today and check that book out so I can
Buy it. It's worth it.
Is it?
Yeah. Matter of fact, I got it somewhere. I'll let you read it.
All right. I like it. There's a lot. I mean, just thinking about the ones I can remember, and what I said to her was, for every one we remember, there's probably two more.
That'd be, yeah.
Pretty wild time in the 1800s in this, in that Northwest Territory, new state, and Blackford County coming into existence. The things that were happening early on in America, it wasn't like we are today. I mean, it was Wild West, and not in the sense of,
This was the Wild West.
It was
before
the Wild
West, right?
Absolutely. So I'm really curious to know more about what all happened here. It's made me think about it more. Not that I want this to turn into the Chick Show murder podcast. That's never been what I wanted. I've always wanted just this, the conversation. But it definitely made me more interested in looking into the possibilities. So, but what we're here talking about today is, JD, you were involved in the Laymon case when you were a detective.
So I originally started when Matt Felver and I were working uniform, and we were down in the basement one night working third shift, arranging some boxes, and we discovered this pile with the Laymon information in it. I remembered it vaguely because it was my senior year. Oddly enough, I didn't follow it too closely. It's weird. It's a small town, but I heard about it, didn't give it too much thought. And it's strange because some people will remember that was the second murder in 1992. In March, Jimmy Sutton shot and killed his brother-in-law, Gary Overmeyer, on West McDonald Street.
Wow.
And was sentenced 2-3 weeks before this murder. He got 40 years for that. So this was the second murder in 1992.
Totally blew me away with that.
And I didn't know that till I got law enforcement. They go, yeah, remember the Sutton case? I go, I don't remember that. But it happened.
Wow.
He got 40 years. So this was the second one. So I became interested in it, and Matt Felver, shortly thereafter, was promoted to detective. And he kind of took it upon himself, opened it up. I helped him with it. So we talked to some other people. Matt's priority at that time was this is 2001, end of 2001, beginning of 2002. So we're going on 9.5 years, 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to those older cops because they're going to be retiring. 1992 was different. No internet. There was no digitized media. It was all tape. Probably needed to preserve these tapes and get the recollection of the people who were there as best that we could. And that was Matt's goal, and it was the smart thing to do. So we talked to some of the older people. Alan's mom, Rose Laymon, she had called often over the years.
Sure.
Do we know anything? And there really wasn't much to offer at the time, but me and Matt went over to Marion and talked to her at least to hear her side of it again. She talked to police countless times over the years, you can imagine. But we talked to her. Have you heard anything else? What have you been hearing over the years? Tips had come in. They had heard things, but again, was it actionable?
Right.
Didn't seem to be, but it was information. And every officer involved in that in the beginning until today, they've done the work. I don't like it when people say, yeah, typical. Small town department couldn't solve the murder. That's not fair. I can there were, like I told, there was thousands of man hours, a couple thousand pages of reports, interview reports, notes. They followed up every tip. They were getting all types of tips for months. The work was done.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, in society today, there's not 100% clearance rate for homicide. It's just an unfortunate statistic, but they did the work.
It's interesting you say that. I watched the new documentary on the Zodiac Killer. I don't know if you've watched that or not. It's on Netflix. But the Zodiac Killer no one was ever prosecuted for that.
Right.
We're talking about multiple murders in huge population areas, high publicity, but a different time. Very difficult to think about today's technology and our brain set being today's technology and DNA evidence and forensic science and its progress. And to think that the Zodiac Killer, even though they had interviewed him multiple times, and according to this documentary, one of the people claims that he admitted to him on the phone that he did it. Everything pointed at a guy, and he never got prosecuted for it. And here we are, thinking about, well, it's a small town, blah, blah, blah. It's not the case. There are just anomalies that happen. There are outliers that happen. And it's not just back then, it happens today.
It does. And it's probably important to note, too, that the Indiana State Police was heavily involved in this. Veteran homicide detectives were involved in this. So, again, the work was done.
Yeah.
The right people were there. When Matt started looking at it in 2001, and I helped to an extent to caught up on it, and I remember thinking, man, I didn't know this. Again, because this is only 10 years.
Right.
And just within those 9.5, 10 years, DNA was a thing now.
Mm-hmm.
In 92, it really wasn't. And people didn't really think about DNA until 1995, O.J. Simpson. So that was still 3 years from the time of this.
Right.
And people really still didn't understand DNA. 2000, we were getting a better understanding. Now, today, it's common, right? You want DNA in every case you can get. That wasn't the way back then. So a lot of the recollections of the officers, EMTs, things that were re-recorded, preserved digitally in 2001. And again, just where do you go? There was just nowhere to go. So then fast forward to 2004, there was some more information. Another tip was brought in. So we kind of talked to some people again, old witnesses, couple witnesses, again, nothing really new. But in 2007, at this time, Matt Silver was the chief, and he authorized any and all resources. He did the official reopening, whatever assets needed to be dedicated to this, he made it possible. He made it happen. Arguably the largest reopening of that case ever. Eric Hawk and I got with Jeff Sones, who was the detective on the sheriff's office, and was one of the original investigators. So he had a lot of that native information, that knowledge. He was there. He was in the scene. He was in on the interviews, taking notes. He was there. Very integral to this reopening. Very valuable. Kind of brought us up to speed on what he remembers, and we coupled it. And we did this. It was our priority case, this cold case, in 2007 for quite a while. Interviewed some new people that hadn't been interviewed necessarily back then. Marsh, back in 19, was a pretty sought after job for kids our age, right? It was a good after school job, paid pretty well. So a lot of the kids we went to school with worked out there.
Yeah.
They knew Alan Laymon a little bit because he'd been in Hartford City for about a year managing that store. So we talked to a lot of those people who didn't necessarily get talked to. Again, nothing real actionable, but some insights of what they'd heard. And there's a lot of speculation, a lot of rumors. I even saw an older news article where the chief at the time, Doug Hall, had said, "Got to stop with the." They were getting a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And he was asking, please, don't spread the rumors. It's really not helping.
Oh my God, can you imagine today the Facebook posts?
Well, yeah, I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful? I don't know. I mean, social media wasn't an option at the time, but I can only try to imagine what was going on in 1992 with what would happen today. And I think we know it would be. There'd be all over.
Yeah.
There's nothing in and of itself wrong with rumors, because there's been cases like, oh, this is what I heard.
Sure.
Wow. Okay. And it works out. But some of it was very disturbing. It really bothered his mom and dad, what they were hearing. And they were calling upset. Like that wasn't true. Had to do with one of them in particular involved some disfigurement. He was stabbed numerous times, but it was like an intentional, deliberate. That didn't happen. That made him feel okay. At least it wasn't something like that.
Right.
So we worked it as much as we could, but then December 30th, 2007, we got called away to our own murder, Dustin Reed. Well, me and Eric and Jeff Sones, we had to work that. And that took hundreds and hundreds of man hours and days and weeks and a little bit of a manhunt. And we had to tie that together. And what I hope people appreciate is the burden of proof needed. You may really know who did it. You may have a great idea who did it, but the threshold is pretty high for criminal charges. And maybe even more so for a homicide murder charge. It's high to get there.
Yeah.
And so even in cases where they think, well, that's obvious, he did it, there's still a lot of work you got to put in. You don't assume anything. You confirm everything. So that kind of took us away from that. But when we regrouped after that, where do we go with Alan Laymon again? And we just didn't know where to go. We collected a lot of DNA samples from people voluntarily.
That's what I was getting ready to ask. How were people?
So again, 2007, any new person, and even there were some old who had been interviewed before in 92, and some people have been interviewed 3 or 4 times. When we went through this time, Eric and Jeff, who were evidence technicians, we would ask them after we were done, would you voluntarily give us a DNA sample? And every one of them did. And we can get into that later of what we ended up doing with those, but it's just one more disappointment in this case, because here we had DNA technology. We got with the original Indiana State Police tech, John Kelly, who was real excited to get this. This is one who's a veteran trooper, been to hundreds and hundreds of crime scenes, dozens of murders. This really bothers him. He remembers it. Because of just the we never got a break in this case. And right when you think like, okay, and when you're working a good case and you get this like tingle, you're like, oh yeah, and you follow it, and then you're like, no,
that wasn't it.
Doesn't go anywhere. So he was more than he met with us a couple times and showed us some of the original pictures, and they cut linoleum out with the bloody footprints, preserved them. There were some hair samples. So now we're thinking, okay, I've seen enough date lines. Keith Morrison tells me this could be it, right?
Right.
And we sent it to some labs, and FBI labs, and we're told insufficient DNA data. Couldn't really develop a profile. The one we were hopeful on, some blood stains on his pants. Nope, it was his. So again, it was disappointing. And then where we go? And so now here we are. We took it as far as we could, and I left. Matt stayed, and then here comes the next generation. Matt started working with Cody a little bit because Cody was curious, and they tried to work it a little bit more. But who are you going to talk to? Because by now witnesses have passed.
Right. Moving out of state.
Yeah.
Memories fade.
So we try to pass it on to at least we call him the younger kid, right, Cody?
Yeah.
So at least he has some information, and if something comes up, and like I even talking to him on this, he says every once in a while you still get a tip. There's something on the Indiana.gov website, Unsolved Homicides, and this is one of them. Call a tip, and apparently he's got one from an inmate in a prison up northern Indiana. Follow up with it. So it still trickles in.
That's interesting.
32 years later. I've had, I think there's been 2 private detective agencies who have reached out to the prosecutor's office and to the Hartford City Police. We're looking into this, and they haven't even got nearly as far as we did.
Right.
They haven't come close to solving it. So it's frustrating. So we're here now, and it's what can we do, and put the brains together. And well, the only thing we got now is technology, social media, podcasts. Put it out there. It's a big thing in the podcast world.
Absolutely.
What they call them, web investigators, or what? I mean,
Yeah.
And
web sleuths, something
yes,
sleuths.
yes, web sleuths, and there've been successful cases by quote unquote amateur investigators.
Yeah.
So if we can help with the family, Alan's mom and dad have passed for a while now. Still has a sister. And I'm sure she'd like to
Absolutely
know what happened.
You would want to know. Yeah.
It'd have to.
Yeah.
Because it is a kind of like I was saying, it's a fascinating case. There's just so many twists and turns and what ifs, and like, how was it not solved, you think? And honestly, I understand when people say that, like, wow, it was a murder. How did they not solve this? I get it, but when you understand all the things that were in it.
So how much can you share with us today? Can we get in a little bit into the weeds about, the timeline?
Yeah.
Yep. What I'm sure that in my head anyway, the detective me thinks what was his day, and walk us through his day and how it led up to. I'm not even sure what time this happened. I know it was at night. It was later in the evening, closing in on 11 o'clock or so.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you walk us through that?
Yeah. So what happened? Alan Laymon attended a management seminar through Marsh in Bloomington, left that Sunday afternoon, and returned sometime mid-morning on October 21st.
Which was
It's a Wednesday.
Okay.
Just a typical Wednesday night, right? He gets home. We have a timeline. He cleaned up his house because apparently his roommate had kind of left it in a little bit of disarray.
Okay.
But he picked it up a little bit, and there was phone call. He called. He was the roommate was at work in Huntington, Marsh store in Huntington.
Okay. They both worked at Marsh.
Yes. Huntington is about a 35, 40-minute drive. Talked to him when he was at work. And when he called him, though, Alan by that time had already been home, but he was at his mom and dad's house in Marion.
Okay. So he comes home, picks up a little bit, goes over to Marion to see his folks.
Yes. They had dinner.
Okay. Makes a phone call to his roommate.
Yep.
Okay.
Said he was over in Marion. Great. No problem. Roommate calls Alan at his parents' house. he says approximately 9:45. 9:45 to 10. But he apparently had just missed Alan. His mom said, oh, he's already heading home. So we established the timeline, right? We're talking approximately 10 p.m. He had left Marion to go back home. 27 to 30-minute drive is what they established. Okay, hangs up the phone. Roommate collects his things, closes out his drawer, does his thing. He says he leaves approximately 10:05, 10:10, some in that area is when he heads home from Huntington. So
no security cameras, anything like that to confirm,
no
right?
cell phone data, no
right,
no
no
cameras,
digital
no
clock out.
no
Okay.
nothing like that. But he was there. People saw him. Pretty good alibi.
Okay.
People see him. So witnesses in the apartment hear louder voices
At about what time?
at about 10:30. So
Okay.
these times are all approximate.
Sure.
So
about the time he's getting home.
had to have been
Yeah.
pretty close. The upstairs witnesses at the time hear it because they were laying in bed or watching the World Series was playing at this time. And they kind of hear it and they think, ooh, they're kind of having a little disagreement. And we're putting this about 10:30 is when they first start hearing it. They say it lasts about 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. And at some point, it sounds like it's getting somewhat physical, like they're kind of wrestling. And they hear somebody say, why don't you just leave? But they can hear the voice getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And then they're just quiet. They didn't hear anybody leave. And they said it wasn't just but a couple of minutes of when they hear the roommate get home. So the roommate had just missed who was ever in that kitchen. Had to have just missed whoever was in that kitchen. 911 call comes in at 9:52. Or I'm sorry, 10:52.
Okay.
Man,
that's tight.
This is all real tight. What even gets even more interesting is Aaron Henderson was on duty. This is his first night solo in the car. He done his little FTO training. Sergeant Fred Foreman had said, tonight, go on your own, patrol, do what you got. It was his first call.
My God.
Can you imagine?
Oh.
But Aaron remembers he is driving around. He is literally a few blocks from this apartment on patrol. Notices a red Plymouth kind of quick, he thought, down Jefferson Street, southbound. Aaron's at Barber and Jefferson, facing west. His car goes, he thought, that's kind of fast for residential. He goes to try to get a radar lock on him, and Aaron says the lens fell out of the radar unit. It's like, wasn't meant to be. The equipment just failed.
Yeah.
So Aaron proceeds on west on Barber. And you're talking within a few minutes is when he's getting called to 702.5 North Jefferson. It was kind of what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And it was dispatched kind of like an unknown problem. Something's going on. Then Fred Foreman is actually first one on scene. Sees what's going on. EMS secures the scene. Very tight secured scene. And then this starts the whole call the state police, call the crime team, evidence techs, detectives. They get there and they start that investigation. So we're talking within 20, 25 minutes.
I mean,
a lot happened.
Yeah, within an hour and 20 minutes, you've got someone making a phone call. Hey, I'm at my parents'. Okay, see you in a little bit. Get in their car, make a drive, 30-minute drive from Marion to Hartford City. Another person finishing up work, leaving about 10 o'clock from their workplace in Huntington to make a 50-minute drive to Hartford City. It's about 50 minutes. Yeah?
They estimated 35 to 40 where he's at in Huntington.
Okay. So now, I mean, the window is so narrow.
Yes.
We're talking a 20-minute window from Laymon gets home to roommate gets home.
Yes.
And a murder occurs in that 20-minute window.
I mean, police were on the scene, and it was still, I mean, you're talking minutes. This guy had been laying there deceased. Just minutes. It wasn't hours, it wasn't days. Police were on the scene literally minutes after a murder. So you're hopeful, right? You're thinking, oh, okay, let's put this together.
Right. We've all watched the first 48.
Yeah.
You know?
And again, in their defense, those officers on scene, the detectives and tech, they worked probably 27 hours straight because they had worked all that day, had gone home, had maybe just laid down or was watching the World Series, and they're called back in. And they worked from 10:52 that night until almost noon the next day, interviewing people, putting things together, collecting statements. I mean, so again, this wasn't just
process in a crime scene.
Yeah. They put the work in.
Wow.
You had a police officer see that car literally going to the murder scene within minutes. You're talking all this stuff is going on, and it's only two blocks from the police department. Right. All this stuff is going on in this little area in this short amount of time.
So tell us about the red Plymouth.
Well, that was his car.
That was Laymon's car?
The roommate's car. So Aaron had seen the roommate heading home.
Okay.
And he thought it was fast.
So he's on the west side of town. West Barber. You said something about
he's a barber in Jefferson.
Oh, okay. So he's not far from it.
A few blocks away.
Yeah.
Sees the roommate's car going down Jefferson. He thought it was fast. Tries to get the radar lock. Lens falls off. Equipment malfunction. Oh.
And this is before a call.
No. Yep. Absolutely. This is just a Wednesday night. This is a Wednesday night. Aaron proceeds on west on Barber, ends up over by, I believe he said over around Sigma Phi when the dispatch.
4 or 5 blocks.
He gets dispatched to the scene
Wow.
of having a known problem. And even then you're thinking, or he was thinking, okay, Fred gets there, Aaron gets there. And right off the bat, you're seeing, because it's right at the door is where his body was found. And there it is. You're like, oh, wow. And then Aaron sees that car like, I just saw that car. And puts it all together. And then that's when the roommate confirms, yeah, that's the way I went home. He went 3 to Park, over to Jefferson, and was heading in that way. So again, all this is happening within this short amount of time.
Okay, so the car is kind of insignificant outside of, yep, he probably wasn't there.
Other than it really established that he couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
Because whoever did it would have been covered in blood.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no way you're getting out of there. I was watching something that was talking about, you know, when we watch a movie and you see a murder scene, that it's nothing like the reality of what a murder scene is. And the reality is there's blood everywhere. That it's on the ceiling. It's behind and underneath a couch on a piece of fabric somehow. It's the magic blood drop that magically gets somewhere. It's everywhere, and it's all over.
It is all over. The scene is in that kitchen, which is right at the door.
Very small
kitchen. And again, we have witnesses that hearing this, right? They're giving us a time frame like, yeah, we heard it. We heard him saying, why don't you just leave? So there's some sort of a disagreement. So what complicates it is his body was found, no shoes, no socks, no shirt. He's wearing pants that he had just bought on his way back from Bloomington. Like he maybe was trying them on to see if they fit, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's wearing. So, of course, his family is saying, well, he never would have let anybody, because there's no forced entry at all. And they're thinking, well, he wouldn't have just let somebody in he didn't know, first of all. And he almost certainly wouldn't have just let a stranger in his house just wearing pants.
Right.
Right?
Right. Well, that was my first thought when you said that was, you got no shirt, no shoes, no socks. I mean, I'm not going to the door like that.
Right. So it's probably somebody he knows.
Okay. So now the crime scene is being processed. What's going on with the roommate at this time? Is now he being questioned?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, he's out in the ambulance. They talked to him briefly, but then they end up asking him to come up to the police department, and where they interviewed him more in depth. Several hours later, he waited there while they processed the scene, because it took hours to process the scene.
Oh God, I'm sure.
They called in other officers. They canvassed. They start talking to people. What did you hear? So, again, this is where it gets interesting, right? The witnesses upstairs, who had heard the scuffle and disagreement, had heard a car with a loud muffler kind of drive by 3 or 4 times.
Mm.
Kind of sounds like maybe they were circling,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why would it drive by 3 or 4 times? Because to them, it sounded like the same vehicle. Witness across the street saw a vehicle stopped at Jefferson and Van Cleve. So to get an idea where it is, this apartment was at the corner. It would be at the northeast corner of that intersection, Jefferson and Van Cleve.
Okay.
This car is stopped facing north.
That house isn't there anymore.
No, it is not.
Okay.
This car is stopped on Jefferson, facing north, so catty corner to the apartment. And the witness says it sat there for a minute. Well, it's not waiting on traffic. It's 10. This is about 10:30. So again, when he's probably getting home or close to it, this car's kind of sitting there. It's weird. There's no traffic at 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night on a Wednesday night in Hartford City.
Right.
On Van Cleve Street. But it sat there. Then it proceeded on north. Witnesses about a block north of the place, they tell officers they saw a car similar to what was described by the first witness.
Do we have anything other than loud?
Well, they didn't say it was loud. The witnesses upstairs in the apartment never saw it. They heard a car.
Okay, gotcha.
The first witness across the street saw it. There it is. The witnesses a block and a half north saw a car that the description matches what the witnesses back that way, south, had told police. They described it, said it sat at the stop sign at Jefferson and North Street. So Van Cleve and North were the one-way streets, remember, if you remember that.
100%.
It was stopped there.
That's why, in my head, I'm sitting here going, holy shit, this is 2 blocks from the police station.
Right.
Police station was there at that time.
Yes. Yeah. So it was at that stop sign they thought and 2 people saw it. They were together. Saw it, described it, and then it turned west towards Walnut Street, State Road 3. That way.
Can you tell us what the description of the car was?
So
I hate to sound like every other murder mystery podcast when I ask that question, but it's a genuine question. We did not sit down and plot this out. Can you share that?
Yes. So the description is close. And I say that because these are people who they weren't investigating anything, right?
Right.
So
they just saw something.
It was they thought, mid-'80s, Pontiac, TransAm, Firebird, or Camaro. Blue or black, possibly. Because this is dark. It's at night. But if you put it together, it might have been the same car. Somebody thought it was a Camaro. Somebody thought it was a Pontiac. But again,
Outside of a front and rear bumper,
very
pretty-
similar.
pretty simple.
Blue in color, maybe black, but hey, I just looked over there and glanced at it because they're not on point, right? They're not.
Right.
Um,
They're not doing
pretty
surveillance.
close. But again,
Right.
neither of them recognized the car. They had said they really had never seen it again. So, okay, this is good. And again, this was followed up pretty extensively. Coincidence, maybe, I don't know. But that was the description given on that. It was just one more, I guess, disappointing lead. Like to put it all out there, because again, did like 3 or 4 people see this actual car leave a murder scene? Now, where it was at, it was on Jefferson, and there's some indication that maybe the people that did it went down the alley to the east. So maybe they weren't parked out front on Jefferson. Maybe they were parked over in the alley, or maybe they were parked over on 2 blocks away, or did they walk? I don't know. But there were 2.
There were 2 people.
Yes.
Interesting.
We're able to determine that too because there was 2 distinctive shoe prints in the blood.
Okay.
And with the amount of blood present, they made very good shoe impressions.
Yeah.
All over that kitchen, because you could almost see in your mind what had happened, because there was quite a scuffle. He was stabbed 14 times, 9 in the back, 4 to the neck, and then there was only one defensive wound on his left arm.
Wow, this is a 2-on-1.
Yes, and he had blunt force traumas to the head. So there was an altercation.
Front or back?
Back to the right, on the side, basically. So we don't know what he was hit with. It could have been a fist, right? Something, but there was trauma. They were able to determine at the autopsy, and then he was stabbed, 14 times. And it was the 4 to the neck that ended up being absolutely fatal. And we know there was a fight and a struggle, and pretty intense, based upon the witnesses, the autopsy to the head, right, and then the amount of blood on the kitchen floor. It was linoleum, so you can imagine.
Oh my God! Yeah,
it was slippery,
slip and slide,
pooling, and Alan's bottom of his feet were covered in blood. So he was standing fighting while he was bleeding profusely. And then eventually, exsanguination, you get weak, he succumbs, and then he falls prone on the kitchen floor.
So those voices saying, just leave, odds are, aren't his.
No, I think they were his.
You think they were?
I think those were his last words. Of just pure, probably terror, right? He probably knew he was dying.
In my head, I'm thinking these 2 people are looking at each other, and one of them is going, what do we do now?
Sure.
And the other one says, just leave. But you think it was him?
No, I think he said, why don't you just leave?
Initially, I thought that same thing.
Why don't you just leave? He's probably trying to get him out.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause nobody wants to see, like, I don't want somebody to see me in a weakened state either.
Or was that
prior to?
Maybe that was his last plea of, why don't you just leave? Because
I see.
Alan was to the point where he was frustrated. Something triggered this, right? Because it went from what would seem to be people who knew each other,
right,
talking, to a physical fight, to steak knives that were in the house, right? So
these weren't brought in.
No.
These were native to the house.
Yes.
And just opportunity.
Yes. which opens up the door to a whole bunch of other questions.
What are they doing there?
Well, how did they know where the steak knives were?
Right.
The kitchen drawer was open in the kitchen and left open, where it looks like where knives and utensils were kept.
And why didn't he go after one
Well,
first, maybe,
we believe he did.
You think so? Okay.
There was 3 knives collected.
Oh.
One knife was found very close to his elbow, right elbow, in the blood. One was found up towards his head by the refrigerator. And another third one was found about 10 feet away on the other side of the kitchen by the wastebasket. And it was bent almost at a 90-degree angle.
That hit bone. Or fallen on, or
Something.
that hit something hard.
Yes. But you're talking 3 people were in that kitchen. There were 3 knives found in the kitchen on the floor. 2 people left.
Bloody.
Very bloody. Yes.
So there's 2 people that know what happened
Yes.
that are still alive. Possibly.
Possibly still alive. Yes.
How old was he at this time?
He was 32.
Okay, so 32, that's to 2004, he's 60.
64.
Yeah.
Would have been 64.
Not that much older than us.
Well, 14 years older than him.
Yeah, but I mean, not that much older in the grand scheme. I mean, I have siblings that are older than that. Jennifer's siblings are 68, 69, 67. We have,
So
this isn't that much older than us. So I'm thinking those persons involved, not that much older than us.
probably not. If these were people that we think that didn't know him, and it was like in his peer group, right? Or the roommate's peer group.
They had the ability to have a mid-'80s, potentially a mid-'80s, Camaro Trans-Am. I mean, I didn't have that money, I didn't have the money for that. I knew a few people that did, but you still got to pay for that.
Still got to pay for that, yeah. Because, at that time, it was a 7-year-old car.
Right.
And people back then didn't really go through cars like we do today.
Right.
I mean, if you got a car, you usually kept it longer
Yeah.
than even what, I do today. It seems like after 2 or 3 years, people get new cars.
Right.
But back in 92, it was, if you got a car, you're going to keep it.
So now I'm thinking, why are these people there? And I'm sure
Great question.
the detectives that had to be in your guys' head too. Why are these people there? Once you determine we've got 2 people, there's 3 people in this room, and 2 of them are perpetrators. One of them is a victim.
Why was he there?
Why were they there?
And why did Alan feel comfortable enough just to hang out with his new pants?
Right.
Because they found he had several items of clothing that he'd bought in Castleton on his way back from Bloomington. So he picked up several things, and again, like we talked about, that short time frame. This was the first thing he tried on.
Right.
It had to have been, because there were still other things in the bag, and well, here you go. I'm gonna try on these to make sure they fit, because I may have to take them back.
I can't help but think roommate's on his way home.
Yeah.
He's hurrying, according to Aaron.
Right.
Does the roommate know there's people coming over?
So everybody I've talked to has their views and opinions on this case. And every one of them you think, that's possible. I mean, that's one of the problems with this case is it's really hard to completely do away with any particular theory. Did he know? I don't know.
Why
was he going so fast?
In the interviews, did he allude to,
No.
I know who may have been there?
No, absolutely not.
Not even a hint of, I think he was.
Jeff and I and Eric talked to him again in 2007. Again. He's never lawyered up. He has never lawyered up. He got frustrated at some times, but he's probably been interviewed probably a dozen times.
Hmm.
And he's never, to my knowledge, lawyered up. And he talked to Jeff and I and Eric again at his home. He lives, and it's pretty much the same story as far as we can tell. He denies it. Don't know who did it. He didn't do it. Don't know what more he can tell us.
And I'm sure you guys fully vetted phone records and
They pulled, so again, no cell phone data, no GPS, but they pulled all the phone records for everything. The house, the marsh, both marshes. I mean, there's a ton of just phone records from a bunch of different places just to make sure.
yeah,
And again,
nothing that led to you guys to go, okay, here's something, that aha moment, or
right,
that nothing.
other than it's weird. So you ask the question, and this is what causes you to go down these rabbit holes, right? Is when you're an investigator, especially after the fact. Why would you go down Jefferson Street when you could just go straight down 3 over to Van Cleve and then you're right at your house?
Right.
And why were you going so fast? If you're in a hurry, the quickest way would be Walnut Street, Van Cleve, bam, there you are. Why was he speeding home? But again, you can come up with reasons why, right? He wanted to get home. He was tired.
Yeah.
Wanted to get home because he knew he left the place kind of
a mess. Yeah.
And he didn't want to be that roommate.
Yeah.
You can come up with very reasonable explanations for why that happened.
Drugs? Anything?
That was also a theory. That Alan Laymon did not, every person who was spoken to, Alan doesn't drink, smoke, or swear. Every person. His roommate, on the other hand, a lot of people, he's all into that. And that was part of their dynamic, is Alan was going to take care of the roommate. He was kind of like this, you need to get your stuff together.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the theory.
Those guys there looking for the roommate?
Wrong person, wrong time. They were there for somebody else, but here's this guy. What do you do?
Are they there waiting on roommate?
That's another theory. Were they actually in the apartment when Alan got home? That was explored.
Oh my gosh!
Which would explain why he was just in his in just pants, trying on pants, right? Because he didn't answer the door because they were already inside. Which opens up a whole other there was no forced entry. So how they've gotten in.
Right.
And then if they were intruders, you would have think he would have reacted probably a little bit different than why don't you just leave? I mean, it wouldn't have lasted 10 or 15 minutes.
So my brain started thinking, they're there for the roommate, and he's probably met this. I'm just going down my little rabbit hole for the moment. All right, I'm chasing this one.
Have fun, because you're going to do it.
I know you guys, and I know you guys have already been here, but I'm just going to chase this one. So they show up. He gets home. They're waiting on roommate to get home because they realize, hey, he's coming from Huntington. He'll be in Hartford City about 10:45ish, 10:30ish. We'll be there waiting. Whatever the reason, right? I'm going to assume drugs in this scenario. Something drug related.
Or money.
Or money.
There was
speculation money, drugs.
That he had a lot of money stored away.
Okay. So they're there waiting. They don't see roommate. They see Alan. Alan has seen them before, is aware, and being naive of how dark some people can be, invites them in to wait. They get a little snarky. Why don't you just leave? And then they don't. They get shitty, and it becomes I'm by the knife drawer. I'm going to scare them with a steak knife, and they'll leave. Well, now they know where the knives are, and there's 2 of them, 1 of him, and it's on.
Yep.
That's just, and I'm no doubt in my mind the police went through that. That's played out, right?
No, it is, and it makes perfect sense, and that's kind of where I've always leaned. Is I bet Alan introduced the knife,
Hmm.
whether he was cutting tags off his pants,
Oh, yeah. Oh, I never thought about that.
whether he was like, this is just weird. Now this is turning into something different, and he felt
Sure. Oh, I've been in that scenario.
uncomfortable,
Yep.
and then he picks up the knife and said, "You better get out of here."
Yeah.
And maybe that was the knife that was bent.
Mm. It's time for this to be over with. I'm uncomfortable.
And now it's
You
2-on-1 on slippery linoleum.
Yeah. Oh God.
So that's always been the issue of what would trigger such a reaction, a violent reaction, right? What disagreement could you possibly have if they had quote laying in wait? It's not a big apartment. You're talking 2 rooms,
Mm-hmm.
counting the bathroom. You're talking a kitchen, like a living room, and then a bedroom, and 4 rooms. It's very small. You're talking like 600 square feet.
Right.
Only place they could have hid would have been in a bath.
We're gonna pause. All right, brother. Poop on the floor averted. The dog has done his business.
He's a big sweetie.
Look at that. Hey, big guy. All right. So, tons of theories, right?
Right?
So, how does this? I'm imagining, obviously you weren't there for the initial investigation piece. You pick up 12, 13 years later ish.
Yeah.
So, you didn't get to see the initial. I don't mean excitement in the way we think of excitement, but the excitement of a case like this. When you come in, what is the overall feel you're getting from those that were there?
Frustration, because this is one you would think, if we were just lay out the kind of the facts, you would think, oh yeah, you get this one solved.
Man, I'm just realizing how young Aaron was.
Right.
Like, that's just hit me.
Yeah,
That just hit me. Because, like, we went to high school together.
Yep.
That just hit me. Okay. I don't know why it took me this long. Even after our initial discussion forever ago, it just now come to my head. Holy crap. He's a boy.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm through that. But damn it.
But it
man.
brings it home, right? So this
It really does. I'm thinking about, I was 18 at the time, and I was fresh out of dropping out of Ball State. I was around. I was hanging around Hartford City at that time. I was running around, doing my dumb stuff.
Yeah. And right there it was. But to your question though, it's frustration, because again, this was worked extensively for months. I mean, even the original investigators were following up leads in the summer of '93, because it shifted it ended up going up into a migrant camp in Huntington, based on 3 stolen money orders from Marsh, which again, this opened up a whole other avenue of like, oh, okay, now you're onto something. Weeks invested in that lead on these money orders. Yeah, most it was a migrant camp. Most of them left, went back to Mexico. We got the Huntington County sheriffs involved, and they gave some names, and they were getting like some jailhouse snitches, so to speak. So then you had to bring in translators. I mean, so this is just, again, the extent to what this was going. You actually have to try to understand what's going on. And a lot of their leads that weren't true. It couldn't have been true. Like one of them was like, yeah, I know this guy. He was bragging he shot some guy in Hartford City last fall. He was never shot. He was stabbed. Okay. So here you go. But whatever he would say, you'd have to follow it up.
Right.
You have to, even though you think there's no way. You got to follow it up. So everything that was said was followed up. Crime Stoppers was a thing back then. There was tips on Crime Stoppers. Never came to fruition on anything actionable.
So it goes cold? When does it go cold?
I would say the summer of '93.
Okay.
The migrant camp in Handy County lead was really exhausted. The money orders were stolen by the roommate, of course, which is, again, we're coming back to the roommate. But they investigated that very thoroughly, and just couldn't come at anything to successfully charge anybody.
Yeah.
Nothing. Again, it's a lot of suspicions, right? It comes back to this, but we can't find any. Not even close to probable cause on this guy. It's weird, but people were different, and if he had some involvement in it, they've never been able to collect anything to say that. So, in his defense, right? What do you do?
Yeah, right. I mean,
and again, as far as I know, he's never asked for a lawyer. Not once.
I would have lawyered up instantly. Instantly.
A lot of people would.
Just because. I mean,
what's scary, right?
Yeah. I mean, we've seen enough go wrong. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen enough go wrong where you feel compelled. As a school administrator, I was very aware that people would feel compelled to just own it to get it over with. People do that.
Absolutely, they do.
You know, and
I've seen it. I've been on the other end of it where I get confessions of horrible crimes. It's like, wow, I did it. You know, I can't believe they said that, but they did it. And then you get the full confession. But, you know, try to get a 16-year-old kid to tell you who bought that beer for him. It's almost impossible.
Right.
But I've had people, horrible things to kids, child molesters, murder. We got a confession on a murder. It's the conscience, right?
Yeah.
It eventually plays on you, and people just want to be done with it most of the time. But there are psychopaths, sociopaths. It doesn't bother them. So it's really hard. And I'm not suggesting that the roommate is one of those.
Right.
But there's arguments you can make for him. And there's other things you just scratch your head. Like, that's just weird. But people are strange.
Did the case ever take you to him? Like, legitimately? Yep.
Well, I mean, he's probably the most scrutinized individual in this entire investigation.
Yeah.
You're talking.
And that's why I asked, did it take you there? Because there's times, I'm sure, where the evidence just takes you there.
Well, it all comes down to, that's just weird.
Yeah.
If his alibi hadn't been so pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean.
And the timing, again, we're talking about that short time frame. He couldn't have done it. There is no way he could have done it.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're only left with conspiracy. Well, if he's conspired or he knows something's going down and he wish it wouldn't happen and he can't stop it, well, maybe that's why he's trying to get home. But if he was in on it, why would you be trying to get home so fast?
Mm-hmm.
The logical thing would be, I know it's going down, but I'm going to stop by
his parents.
Yeah.
I'm going to go through Marion.
Well, he called.
Oh, yeah.
He knew he wasn't there.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm going to stop and get a soda drink, soda pop.
Yeah, but even then, like, he called his parents. So he does know he's not there. So it's like, hey, man, I'll just take my time at work.
Or, yeah, offer to work overtime or help the stock boy. There's things he could have done.
And through that whole thing, just going, hey, I'll help, but I got to hurry. My roommate just got home. I haven't seen him in a few days, you know.
Right. It's just one of those other things like, oh, that's just weird.
Was there any time where the evidence did take you somewhere? Where
Well, so the migrant camp in Huntington,
okay,
those money orders were stolen for $500 each. And they traced one of them up to this migrant camp in Huntington, this apple orchard up there. It was cashed in Fort Wayne, and that led into a whole other, like, who did it? And that turned out to be fairly complicated because of the migrant situation and their travel, and most of them didn't know who they were. I mean, if you're looking through they try to identify them. Some of them had names. Some of them were just number 2. You know, he always wore a bandana, never talked. That was number 2.
okay,
They did a lot on that. It just never came back to why would this have resulted in the death of Alan Laymon?
right.
It just never came back to that.
So you jump in mid 2000s.
So 2001 briefly, then again in 2007.
Okay.
Kind of 2000. Another suspect or witness back in the day he's a witness 3 or 4 times. He was the guy who's always calling, like, hey, he called us again in 2004, and me and Matt interviewed him. But Matt just got chief like a few months. So me and Matt talked to him, and he didn't have anything new. And then 2007 was when Matt, as the chief, really, hey, whatever you need, he made it available. And again, we did that for several months and got called away on our own. Homicide, December of 2007. But when that was concluded, investigation-wise, we tried to pick it up again, but we were forced with what every other detective had been forced with. Where do you go from here?
Where do you go?
We really were.
Did you guys have anything new at that time?
Well, the DNA.
Okay.
We were really like, okay, hey, there's I think some things we can do here. And we were excited. There were some things. Technology was great. Dateline would have you believe, hey.
Oh yeah. All you need is a tick turd of a
something
piece of DNA.
And the Keith Morrison. And then we learned. Well, we were hopeful, right? We had to wait for weeks for that to come back. Disappointed. We pulled more phone records. It just wasn't happening. Could not quite get to that point to where, again, not even close to problem. I mean, nothing. Again, we're just back to where speculation, like, well, this. And almost any theory we would throw together, like me and Matt and Cody would sit around. We'd throw it out there. We couldn't just say absolutely not. I mean, we had our own opinions, like, any cop who's ever been involved in this. Oh, it was so-and-so. And you're thinking, I don't think so, but I can't say absolutely not.
Is there a consensus?
I don't think so.
Interesting. I mean, because, like, I'm sure y'all compare your notes and you're like, you want to hunt down your theory, and you're gonna give it an audition with the other detectives to say, hey, here's what I think, just like I did a minute ago. And you wouldn't put it out there if you didn't have some sort of belief in it,
Well, sure. And
so was there one where other detectives were like, I think so too, or?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I'm talking like there's no, like, if we're going to take a vote of a theory where a majority of those involved are going to come on this one theory. It's probably 3 or 4 or 5 theories. Several witnesses were more than eager to give their theory. But when you start pressing them on, like, why do you think that? It's like,
it's a gut.
That's just who he is.
Oh, okay.
Well, okay. But
was there anybody that knew him that well outside of the roommate?
So, a lot of attention was given to the roommate and that portal, right?
Okay.
Because it made complete sense. There was just a lot going on over there. I was more on, like, well, let's look at Alan's background. right? Is what's going on over here? Don't drink, don't smoke, but so we've really looked at that. Um, Again, he's comfortable, knows him for a while, friends, hanging out. So we're exploring that, and where can we go with that information? And it was investigated fairly well, but again, a lot of attention was put on the other half of it. Very thoroughly investigated, in my opinion. Well, let's look back this way again, because there's things that we know now that they didn't know then. Because there's two different parties here, right? It's which just it doubles your possibility of theories.
Honest to God, in that time frame, I went from maybe these were Alan's friends,
Yeah.
and he's invited them over for when his roommate comes home.
I would disagree with him inviting them over, because
Okay.
it sounds like he was a fairly private individual.
Got it.
Everybody they talked to at Marsh, there was only one person they talked to said that had ever been to his apartment, and they just hung out for a couple and played guitar, because Alan played guitar and liked country music and things like that. That was the only one we found, and it was like 2 hours. Hey, all right, hey, I'll catch
Only
you later.
time they've been there and they work together on a daily.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, and again, he'd only been here a year, and it sounds like he spent none of his free time really here. It sounds like he worked
Where was
here.
he from?
Marion.
Marion? Okay.
Yep.
So did that take you back towards Marion to start looking into his background?
That's where you have to go.
Okay.
And those people he grew up with and hung out with in the early and mid 80s and go that direction, which is a whole other pot of names, which were looked at as best as they could at the time. But they all focused back this way again, because it was just weird.
Wow. So, evidence-wise, any evidence that stood out outside of the, finding the knives and...
So the 3 knives were important. Dresser drawer in the bedroom was pulled completely out and laid down in front, which was weird. Investigators, they believe, after the murder, they went in real quick to make it look like a robbery, because it looked. Why else would you do that? And most staged burglaries like that, they look staged, right? If you're going in to do something, you don't just pull it out and put it down on the floor.
Right.
You don't take a TV and lay it down. Right. And I've seen those cases. It's like, dude, this is not legit. It's obvious. And that's what they thought, because they did see some blood in the carpet leading back that way.
Okay. So it's after, yeah.
So it was after. Was it to make it look like a robbery? Were they actually looking for something?
Were they looking for something? Yeah, it's kind of what went to my mind first. Is they go to a dresser drawer,
Were they looking for something?
Mm-hmm.
What were they looking for? What were they expecting to find there? They never learned of anything of value that would have been in there. But I don't know.
Roommate didn't.
No, he said no.
Give nothing missing, nothing. Didn't.
His wallet was missing, and I don't know if they ever found the wallet. But nobody believed at the time that this was over a wallet. This wasn't.
Yeah. Come on.
So why take the wallet?
Right.
Or did he lose the wallet? So I don't think they ever. I'd have to go back through it, but I don't know if they ever found the wallet, or what's the deal with the wallet. But it was unaccounted for at the time.
All right. So the elephant in the room is clearly not Frankie. God. But the one that is, were they romantically involved?
It's kind of hard to say.
Yeah.
I think to a certain extent. Everybody they talked to always had assumed Alan was gay. And there were some things that they think maybe with the roommate.
Well, especially 1992. I mean, 1992 is a very different climate for, the LGBTQ community. LGBTQ wasn't even a thing. Sorry,
Right.
plus, wasn't a thing.
No.
1992. You were either gay or lesbian.
So it looks like, from what I can tell, is most people assumed it, based on, like they said, the way he acted, and it just the assumption, but nobody cared. And the roommate says they were just roommates. Maintains that because he had an ex-wife, he had a kid.
Okay.
He says they were just roommates. Nothing was ever found that this was related to his sexuality.
Okay. That was going to be my next question. Was
Nothing was ever found that this related, because everybody they talked to didn't care.
Okay.
It was
Yeah.
We think he is, but oh well. They pretty much liked him because he was a fairly decent guy,
Just a good guy.
likable guy
Yeah.
to himself. But yeah, that was I guess talked about quite a bit, and that I think that fed a lot into the rumors.
Sure.
Because again, 92
Yeah.
is different.
Very different climate.
But nothing was ever found that it was related to that,
Okay.
his sexuality. And then to throw more to it, he was running for political office.
Oh, so it was a political scandal in Hartford City.
That was briefly talked about, but no, this isn't.
Yeah.
It was a coincidence. He wanted to get involved in the community, and at the time, they said, "Oh, you can run for county council." He said, "Sure." He did the paperwork, had a couple signs out, apparently, and it was like 2 weeks before the election. But again, the papers printed it. Candidate murdered. I mean,
Right.
it's true, but nothing again was ever found that this related to anything political at all. It was just coincidence he happened to be running. So we're back to square one.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
It's
I'm.
why is Alan Laymon dead? That's the $1 million question.
Right. More than that, it's a life. It's a person's life.
Yeah.
It's a family member. He has a sister. I'm sure there's probably some nieces, nephews, maybe some cousins, something. There's people that care about this person and deserve to know why. They deserve to know why.
So one of the toughest things about being in law enforcement is these type of situations. His mom, nicest lady you've ever met, and I can't imagine the pain and suffering that she went through, and her husband, his dad, not knowing,
Right.
and just the unbelievable sadness, and then coupled with the frustration, coupled with the not knowing. It's just hard to even fathom.
Is there still enough forensic evidence to be able to
So that's
take advantage of new science?
That's what we have been talking about, and it's going to be looked at again of what's here, what's the technology available, is it worth it? Can we do something with this? So that's being looked at again. The problem with the decision confronted with with Matt at the time as the chief on this in 07 with the hairs. At best, they told us we can get mitochondrial DNA, which is not your DNA where it's 1 in 400 trillion. It's way less than that. But our thinking at the time was, I guess, in the ballpark.
Can it give you, and I don't know that much about DNA, but can it give you a profile?
Well, it would get you like an idea. So
male, female.
Well, like a relative.
Okay.
So our thinking was, great, because we've got a list of suspects, people of interest, I guess would be a more appropriate term. If you can get us, it's either a cousin or second cousin of so-and-so, okay. Guess what? So-and-so has a cousin named such. he was interviewed twice. Okay, we're in the ballpark. Just give us some investigative direction. And we took the gamble, knowing they told us when we test it, it will be consumed.
Okay.
So that's what we're confronted with. Well, at the time, it's 13, 14 years old.
Yeah, you're like, this is best. This is the best it's been.
We went for it, and again, disappointed. But now it's is there more biological evidence that's been preserved that we can give it another shot? And again, with as much blood as there was, 99% of it would have been his. Where do you go to get suspect? Because again, with the steak knives used in the haphazard way that the crime was committed, the people or person, because it could have been just one person doing the stab and the other could have been watching or holding it, right?
Right.
Whoever did the stabbing almost certainly cut themselves. There's no, because there's no hilt on that.
Right.
Had to have been it.
Blood on it. It's slippery.
Something. So get those knives and take them apart. Was talked about.
That hasn't been done?
We think it has been, but what were they looking for?
Okay.
It's just something that needs to be confirmed because state police has been holding that evidence.
Okay. Interesting.
So, again, working with them on what do we think and where's the technology at today.
So the state police have the knives.
And the linoleum and all
They
the
have all the evidence.
They have all the physical evidence.
So you and I both know, and I would assume most of my listeners know, because right now I'm probably picking up listeners that haven't listened to the show before because crime, unsolved mystery, I've got to listen, right? So in that knife, blade goes into handle. Within that crevice, there's opportunity for blood.
Right.
We were talking earlier about it's a steak knife. It's not like it's got some big, handle that prevents your hand from sliding up over it.
Right.
There's 9 verified stab wounds in one area, 4 in another on the arm. At some point, the blood on the handle, on the knife, in the hand, it's going to slip. Somebody else is getting cut. Odds are. Not saying it did, but
Right.
odds are.
And it's something that we looked at, and if it hasn't been taken apart, which I sit here and I think that it has been.
Okay.
And that was just one more, really, just disappointment.
Sure.
But the other stuff, speaking with Cody, going to be another final review of what is still there, what the technology is today, and what can we do? We're at the point now where if it consumes it, you almost have to just go with it and hope now. After this length of time, we get something.
Yeah, because you're coming up on that threshold of the people who are involved are aging or possibly aged out.
Yeah.
The people who care most about this person, about Alan, are also in their 60s as well, or close to it, or older. And not to say that others don't care. I don't want that to come across wrong. But the people who have real care and concern and want for this to be, want a resolution.
Yeah.
Outside of the casual person or the investigators.
You mentioned earlier the vibe and the feeling from the original investigators, and it is frustration because nobody wants a case to go unsolved. The family, the police, society, and that's the genesis of the frustration. And we're to the point now, like you said, it's 32 years. You're gonna wait another 32 years. Whatever can be done technology wise. DNA has come so far, so fast that the things they can get DNA off of today,
oh yeah,
is even more mind blowing than you just say 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, we can do that now.
God, they can generate a face.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's being looked at again. So kudos to local law enforcement even today, 32 years. This
Wow.
is just a testament to the passion of the profession and the trade. It's good tradecraft, and they're still looking at it.
Yeah, and you were talking earlier about, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you were talking earlier about the initial investigation and, how much effort and time and hours that were put into it. And, you hear it's Hartford City, it's what you're going to get. None of those guys want someone else to solve it. At that time, it's like they want to be the person. There's a pride piece that comes along with that of, I'll be damned if I'm not going to figure this out. I mean, I lose sleep over a board game. I can't imagine what this looks like in someone's head.
Well, for like detectives, it's a matter of, if your number gets called, I'm gonna take it.
Want that?
I want it, and I'm gonna do it. And not all of them can be that way. And I will say again, as a testament to the professionals, every original investigator we talked to, there was no ego.
Yeah,
None whatsoever.
That it's like,
I know what you mean, but I want to reiterate that it was a matter of, let's do this.
Yeah.
They were excited because again, they want to solve it.
I want to find it.
And after if it's your number, I'm gonna take it. But when it's gone and it's moved on, it's become cold.
Yeah.
And people come in with fresh eyes, no ego whatsoever. Like, what can I do?
Right.
And several of them came back, said, "Hey, let's go interview some people." And by God, we went and interviewed people. No ego whatsoever.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry it came out that way. And I mean, there's that part of us that I want to be that guy. I want to find that piece.
Well, that's a good detective.
But there's also the piece where the good detective is going, I don't care if I am the guy.
Right.
Somebody find this.
Well, because if you are the guy, it's your obligation, and you got to take that seriously.
Yeah.
And you don't shirk your responsibilities and try to throw them on somebody else.
Yeah.
And after a year, it didn't happen. It goes cold. Other cases come in. Other murders happen. And again, that's why they call it cold, right?
Yep.
Kind of gets put in a box, but no statute of limitations on murder.
Right.
And so you pick it up again and fresh eyes. And that was part of the excitement, I think, from Rich and Phil and Jeff and Brian and fresh eyes. That's always a good thing, right? Because we weren't up for 27 hours at the time.
Right. Right.
We're coming in going, okay, what about this? And I really, off the top of my head, can't think of any question that we asked that they didn't already cover, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no, we never thought of that. It was covered. And again, I just want to really stress the point that the work was done. But you're talking a clearance rate on homicides is, I think the national average today is around 60%, maybe even a little bit less. So you're talking a lot of murders just never get solved.
Wow.
So, and this is one of those. And and actually, Hartford City's been very good in Blackford County on clearing the murders.
Yeah. I mean, this is the only one I can think of, but I'm not.
So I was, I kind of came in at the very tail end of, there was a murder in Montpelier in 2004, I think the spring. And it was Emilio Lopez murdered Melvin Hernandez. State police investigated it, and we came in at the very tail end, walked through the house and things like that. And this is early, I was a sergeant then, so that was kind of like my first exposure, I guess, to homicide.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a week after the fact. They had already arrested Lopez, ended up getting a confession, and got the conviction. And then it was like a month later, here's a witness from Laymon calls. So me and Matt are talking to him. So it's like, all right, what's going on here?
Right.
But again, it seemed to be the same story. Nothing really new.
Yeah.
He kind of asked, why do you even call us? But you got to take the call.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're hoping there's something, even if it's just a tidbit, an emotion
Yeah,
that's
something.
different
And
than someone else's.
so that like the tips, right? You're talking. There was a tip came in 2003 to a trooper who said, "Hey, I was sitting in a bar in Grant County, and I heard these 4 guys talking about this murder. Who are the guys, you know?" And he kind of rattles off some names. Yep, heard the names, but are they actually sitting in a bar 11 years later going, "Hey, remember when we killed that guy in Hartford City?"
Right.
But you followed it. Troopers, they did their thing. They contacted the city police. Matt was the detective at the time in 03. They followed it up. But again, you just reach a point where there's nothing here. Nothing you can really, really do anything with. Because probable cause, it's a threshold that it can be kind of difficult to get to.
Right.
And that's even the low end, right?
Right.
Prosecutors, a lot of times, they don't even want, they want beyond a reasonable doubt before you even get to beyond a reasonable doubt stage in the process. So there's a lot of work done. So you're talking, again, to put it in perspective of the thousands of man hours invested in this case over 32 years, all the different dozens of police officers, prosecutors, lawyers, techs, dispatchers. It's just, it's really, would probably blow your mind.
Yeah.
If you really sat down and think of everything.
Yeah.
Put into it, and to come to a very unsatisfactory conclusion, because nobody's happy with it, except the 2 people who left that kitchen.
Right.
And that's the part of the game, part of the job, but there's got to be something, and it's that one piece that you hope you finally get, and it, probably from where you don't even expect it. Like, I look at the original stuff. Cody's done a real good. He's digitized all of it, scanned it, digitized it. It was boxes, literally boxes of notes, reports, pictures of this, surveillance of that. I mean, just tons of stuff. And I talking with Matt, going, you know what? The name of the 2 people are in they're in those boxes somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Almost guaranteed somewhere in there.
Was there, just came to mind, and I'm sure a listener has thought of this question an hour ago. Was there a time when there were 2 people that were connected that were interviewed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I like how you just, yes.
So, and that's probably the most promising, right?
Sure.
Because who can keep something like that secret?
Right.
It's not 2 people who barely know each other. So it makes sense. I mean, they all 3 probably knew each other.
And these 2 are connected.
Well, they're all, I mean, technically they're all connected, I guess is what I'm getting at, because they all would have probably known each other. I mean, you probably got a group of friends. They all had to have known each other.
Right.
So there's all a connection there. All of them, right? So with that, it makes it even harder, right? Because, yeah, they probably didn't know each other.
Yeah.
I mean, the most difficult homicides, of course, are the stranger ones, right? Because there is no connection.
Right.
Hitman, right? Professional hits, bam, done, gone.
Right.
More successful prosecutions are with people, and that's they kind of build the homicide investigation playbook around that, right? You start in, work yourself out.
Right.
And that's just logical processing, right? You're going to start with that because what are the odds are some stranger?
Well, you start with the knowns.
Yep. Then you got to go to the unknowns, and then which it happens, right? I mean, look at the John Benet Ramsey.
Right.
When I was teaching at the high school criminal justice, that was one of my projects. I said, solve the case. what you can get. The kids loved it, but they were frustrated. So
Right.
you can, and I get it. I don't know who did it.
Yeah.
Because that's another case, right? It's rabbit hole after rabbit hole.
Right. Yeah, and you can dive down them. I mean, we all have our own agendas. We have our own, biases, and we're gonna tap into those first once again because they're the knowns.
Yeah.
And it's easier to do what's familiar than what it is to be unfamiliar and uncomfortable. So, with that being said, is there anything else you can share about this case that might be helpful? Do you have any evidence you can share?
Well, so other than you saw the blood, the knives,
Mm-hmm.
the shoe prints. 2 people were involved, and we know the shoes and we know the size. Converse and Reebok
Interesting.
were the tennis shoes. So it goes to, so we got a lot of tips on, hey, these guys were in the bar and they were kind of talking about it and this and that, and it was that night, right? Okay. And they describe them, chain on the wallet, blue jeans, biker boots, leather jacket. No.
Number one, who's going to the bar after this? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
maybe a hitman, but a hitman ain't going to the bar after this. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure.
you'd have to be pretty just numb to what you just did.
And the scene, I think, based on what I've seen and read, it was chaotic.
Yeah.
You're talking a very intense. I don't think it was probably 10 minutes like the witnesses thought they heard. I mean, they estimated 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I think it was probably a very intense 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, think about, you wrestled, right?
Yes. 3-minute periods.
You're wiped out.
Yes.
And you're not fighting for your life.
Right. So I think it was a very intense 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It doesn't look to have been well thought out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Something happened. And where I think you get the homicide is the injuries to the neck, right?
Yeah.
This wasn't 2 guys fighting and then there's a knife and then he just accidentally just stabs a guy.
Right.
It's 14 times. 4 times to the neck. Right.
Right.
This wasn't accidental. Again, opens up a whole other. What was the second guy doing?
Right. Stabbing him in the back.
Was he stabbing him in the back? Did the other guy get at the throat? Did the other guy totally freak out and he's standing over there by the wastebasket? Like,
Right.
holy.
And maybe in
crap.
the wrestle, the back is happening, and sure.
Don't know. But it was a very, very intense, chaotic 5 minutes. And, I mean, that kind of comes down to that. That's what we're faced with is why is Alan Laymon dead?
Right.
What triggered such a reaction? What triggered such a violent assault? Intense. Hit him in the head, stabbed him, not once, not twice, not thrice, 14 times.
14 times.
That's hey, that's intense. Unless it's both guys were stabbing, and only they did it 5 or 6 times apiece. That's still pretty. That's a lot to stab, right?
Yeah.
What would trigger such a reaction?
And then to get in a car and drive off.
And then drive off. Had to have been covered in blood because there was blood splatter on the wall, on the refrigerator, droplets. There was. You can imagine because he would have, based on his feet being covered,
Right.
he was bleeding profusely as he's standing up, probably fighting.
And holding on to them in some way.
Probably.
I mean, at some point, you've got to hold on to something.
So, both of those people had blood on them when they left. And there was blood, like there's a little white deck outside as they left that was still, as they're leaving prints, footprints, because so much blood. So, yeah, they certainly didn't go to a bar afterwards.
Right.
Or not right away.
Right.
Given the intensity, they would have had to have decompressed somehow, like, oh my God, that just happened.
Right.
And then given the, for lack of a better word, the spontaneity of it, I would think the 2 guilty people would have been thinking, what did we leave there? I mean, it was 1992, and evidence tech work and stuff like that wasn't like it is today. But you're still wondering, like, fingerprints were a thing.
Yeah.
Like, I opened that door.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I touched that knife.
Prints there?
No.
God, I was hoping you'd say yes.
Right. I mean,
at least there's a print, that we don't have a comparison to, but there's a.
How is there not? Right. But they looked.
Wow.
And with so much blood, it's, well, if somebody did get cut, is it mixed in with his blood?
Right.
Well, how you gonna know that?
Oh my God, you got to find that magic spot on the linoleum where where there's a droplet.
Right.
And I'm sure check the, hospital registers of anybody show up that night with
Sure
a
did.
cut.
Sure did. Aaron Henderson did that.
Yeah. Wow.
So they didn't go to the hospital. They probably had to think, oh my God. I don't think they were local.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my belief. So, because there's speculation of people were naming people local. I don't think it was. So you're talking, they're in a car covered in some blood, thinking, oh my God, and driving for a while.
There's nothing around here that's less than 30 minutes. Portland's about 30 minutes. Muncie's about 30 minutes. Marion's about 30 minutes. Bluffton, 35 minutes. Yeah. Truck stop.
So
40 minutes.
30 minutes, they're in this car, probably trying to think, what do we say?
Wow.
When they come calling. And there's a very, very good chance they were talked to. I mean, there's a list of over 100 people who were talked to, probably closer to 200 now. So they had to, come up with a plan.
So it's going to
Don't
be.
say nothing.
Right? Yeah. So it's going to be looked at again. So it's going to become a priority case.
So yeah, he's on it again. So look at the available evidence, assess the capabilities of today. Can we do anything? We're just it's the bottom of the ninth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do what we gotta do.
That's where we're at.
If it's consumed, that sucks. But if it's that one thing that now we can do that they couldn't do 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, like, let's roll the dice and gets us close to something, some direction. Because, right now it's multiple directions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be anything, unfortunately. But, I mean, that's where we're at.
So you've got, are you comfortable sharing the 911 call?
I can. Let's see here. So this was 10:52, October 21st, 1992. And this best serves, I guess, probably as a reference to why a lot of attention was given to the roommate.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at cases now, there's instances where people just react different. Amanda Knox is a pretty common case of that.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that? She acted very strange after that murder.
Right.
And the Italian police were convinced. And if you look at it, you think, oh, yeah.
Right.
She's involved. Come to find out, she wasn't.
Right.
She just reacted differently. And that's a good case to look at. You think, just don't judge a book by its cover.
You don't know what you're going to do. Like,
No.
How many people you hear say, oh, anybody ever did that to me, you have no clue.
Yeah. So I could play it. We'll just see what you think.
Okay. And you can just aim that wherever down is best. It'll.
Jefferson Street. Where you are? Also an ambulance. Okay. Who is that?
It's Alan Laymon.
Okay. What happened?
I don't know. I just got home from work. I just came straight home from work. I walked in. I don't know.
Okay. 504. The officer should be there.
I was just outside waiting.
Okay. Okay. Can you see the officer?
No.
Okay. I'm going to keep you on the phone until you can see Fred. Okay?
Okay. I think I hear somebody.
Dispatch 552. What's your address? 702
He's in the wrong place. I can see him.
Okay.
It's in the back. It's in the alley. I'll go out and get him.
Okay.
Wow.
So he goes out and gets Fred, and so even in that little intense little 2.5 minutes, there's a lot going on. What is he talking about? Right.
Right.
It didn't take Fred long to get there and look and think, oh,
Yeah, that was quick.
yeah, found he was dead. I mean, that happens all the time. They come home, heart attack.
Right.
Didn't know what they had until they got there. But the hospital was 2 blocks away.
Yeah.
Police department was a block away. You're talking police and ambulance were there within minutes, literally minutes of when whoever did this left.
Hmm.
And that's maybe why this is so frustrating. This is, wow.
Gets home about 10:15-ish, 10:30-ish. Roommate gets home 10:52. Is that when the call was?
Well, the 911 call was at 10:52. So pulls in the parking lot. He's there doing his car, walks in. There's the door.
You're talking, let's say a 15-minute window. Let's just give it a 15-minute window.
The witness upstairs put it at 2 minutes. When the last quiet and when they heard Paul pull in and shut his car door. Wow. They say 2 minutes, right? So
Between, oh, wow. Okay. I don't remember that. Wow.
literally. And again, what if he'd got there 5 minutes sooner? If he left work 5 minutes before,
Mm-hmm.
would he be dead?
Mm.
Would he have seen him and said, "Oh my God, there's so and so and so and so," and he'd take off running because he just, and then we did great. I mean,
Right. Now you
investigative
know.
wise, like, yeah, we got a witness. He knows him.
Yeah. Sees their car or something.
Running away.
See him running away.
Yeah, I saw.
Gosh. You know, and there's that part of it. The human part of me is going, he knows that. He's known that for 30 plus years.
Right.
That if I'd have just did X, I was 2 minutes ahead of it. Or 5 minutes earlier. How tough is that to live with?
Yeah,
you know?
he hadn't taken that extra 5 or 10 minutes at work to pick up something to go on the way home.
Right. Right.
I mean, there's so many other little things in such that short amount of time that, yeah.
Man, brother, that's Really interesting. Well, I'm really interested to see where this goes, and hopefully there's a break in some sort. And um,
So Cody has on the Hartford City Police website or Facebook page. He's opened a tip line email. Um, I'll give that out. So if people listen to this and they've never came forward or they've learned something new, they're encouraged to send that information to this email address that I'm about to give you. I know it's here somewhere. HCPD TIPS, HCPD tips at hartfordcity.net. Because that's, at this point, really the only way it's going to be solved is that one little piece of information that gives detectives and investigators direction, and whoever did it, I would think it probably weighed on him. You would hope, and maybe cops knock on the door and they say, "I've been waiting on you." I mean, there's been
right.
instances like that, and they just completely say, "Yeah, I did it." They were just waiting on the knock, and it could be that one little key. And a lot of people, if they don't have that cop thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and in their mind, like, that's not important. And we've had cases like that before. They don't think to mention it because it just doesn't sound important.
Right.
They don't want to bother you. They don't want to. It's not malicious.
Right.
They don't think like that. But then you're investigating. You come back and be like, "Well, yeah, I saw so and so. Wish you would have said that. Well, I didn't think it was important." And that ends up being the piece that is important.
Right. They came home that night and they were really short. You know, like first thing they did was went out and burnt their clothes. I thought that was weird,
Yeah.
but I didn't think it was a big deal.
Yeah. He burns stuff sometimes.
He burns his clothes all the time.
Yeah.
How many times has he done this? Wow. Brother.
It's funny you say that because that is one of the tips. Somebody saw burning shoes.
Oh, man. But they were Nikes. Damn it.
Well, and it was like a year later. Or it looks like. But anyway.
Shoot.
So,
Well,
again,
good.
I encourage any information you're out there. It is being taken serious. It is being looked at. So feel free to email them and let them know.
Great stuff, dude. Well, I'm so glad you reached out to me. You know, I've been wanting to get my podcast back on the air, and I was probably a couple weeks away from doing it. I initially wanted to get back going on at the beginning of October, but I was just still slammed, and it was kind of nice to not have to do it.
Right.
But to get to do it in this fashion, man, this is the type of stuff I want to keep doing. Not that I want to turn it into a murder mystery podcast. That's not what I'm trying to do, but just Blackford County stuff, good information. And this translates way outside of just Blackford County. I mean, this is interesting on a national scale. And, well, I am Mr. Worldwide.
Yeah. You're international, brother.
19 countries and counting. So, yeah, interesting stuff. And it's so relevant to us, you especially, because you're involved. Your involvement, and for me, because of the time frame. You know, I just got out of high school.
Yeah.
I just dropped out of Ball State. I was back in town at the time, and like we were talking earlier, it didn't really resonate with me at the time. But as I've gotten older, it's become more interesting because it's like, man, that happened.
Yeah.
That was someplace I drive by on a regular basis. I rode my bicycle on that sidewalk. I've been in that alley, you know?
Yeah.
And
we got a tour of the apartment before it was tore down.
You did?
The landlord called us, and yeah. So, because I had never been in there.
Oh, wow.
And we found out, and then me and Matt went down there, and Eric, and kind of, there it is.
Wow.
I mean, it'd been painted, but it looked the exact same.
It's really interesting.
And when it tore down, I think in 2010, 2011.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was in there, but it was way after the fact.
Yeah.
But you're right. How many times we've been by there?
Right.
And there it is, and it's unsolved, and that adds to the mystery. It is a whodunit.
if YouTube would let me, I'd be playing the Unsolved Mysteries song right now. But they will
find you. They will slap
They'll
you down.
copyright me, and they won't let it air on YouTube. But that's okay. I won't have to. I'll just. I can hear it.
See, you just got.
Come on,
got
John.
fine.
All right, brother. Thanks, man.
Yep. Take it easy.
See you.